Welcome back to Worm Watts, where we harness the God-given power of compost worms to transform organic waste into amazing living fertilizer. Now, you may be wondering what you're looking at here. Well, we are actually about to do some harvesting. And this is the convenient box that I have found and repurposed for that purpose. And right next to us, we have the bin that we're going to be harvesting, which is the citrus crawlers bin. And it's been a little bit since we checked in on them, but as you can see, the castings look fantastic. They look just so granular. And I think this is going to be a really neat harvest. So I'm really looking forward to it. When we checked this last time, as you can tell, the castings are a little bit moist, which is perfectly fine. Not fully dry and formed, but they do run off the hand fairly easily, so they're not gummy or muddy. So that's really ideal. And as you can see, we've got right here, I believe, this here, sorry about my finger being there. This looks like a roly-poly or a pill bug. And we've got a little spider in there. So all seems to be going well in the bin. So we're gonna go ahead and use a cup to go ahead and harvest this bin. I'm not going to be doing the entire bin, but I did want to harvest some of this to share with the roaster who supplies me with the coffee chaff. And so I've got these empty containers here and this empty box that I plan to fill with a decent bit of castings and gift those to them just to show some appreciation for what they do for us. So as we look under here, we've got some worms, and this is going to be the fun part, trying to pull the worms. So I'll introduce you to where we're going to put them. Their temporary home, when we pull out the castings, we'll use this little cup. I'll scoop, I'll dump, and I'll dig through, and any worms will go in here where I have some nice moist wood shavings and a little bit of leaf mold, or decomposing leaves. So I'm gonna go ahead and open that up for us so that the worm relocation spot can be ready. And I think the worms that go in here will actually be then placed into a new bin. So we're going to be expanding our number of bins here soon. And so these bins, or the worms that go in here, may go toward that relocation. So let's go ahead and get into this. This is a really neat, exciting time. Obviously, we do all of the work of feeding and providing green and brown materials, and of watering and adding in the grit material and making sure that the conditions are just right for the worms. So this is where we get to actually come back and harvest the finished product that they have provided for us. Over here in this corner, you can see another roly-poly. You can see that when you touch it, it kind of curls up into a ball. So that differs. Oops, I didn't get a good zoom on that, but you can see it right there. And that differs from the sow bug. Sow bugs, if bothered, they do not have the ability to basically go armadillo on you and curl up into a ball. So that's what we've got going on here. All right, so the worm relocation center is open. The cup is ready. We're gonna get our first cup of castings. Nice full cup. We'll go ahead and spread that here and see what we get from it. Very excited about this. So obviously we do our best to separate the worms and from the castings. It's not going to be a perfect experience, but we will do our absolute best to try to make sure that we're not sending away worms. Now, of course, I won't be able to take out eggs unless I'm able to spot them. So this will not be flawless, but as we just kind of spread it out, we can kind of get a good idea, a good gauge on whether there are worms in here or not. And I've got one right there. Can barely see it, but it's there. Got some flies coming in to try to take advantage of this opportunity. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the worms and put them into the relocation center. Here's another worm here. We'll just gently pick that up. And into the relocation center it goes. So for the most part, oh, here we go, here's another worm. And I will acknowledge that being a worm farmer has really given me a greater opportunity to handle critters that I otherwise would not have. I was not a big fan of bugs or creepy crawlies growing up, but I think that part of that is just based on fear, honestly. So just getting the opportunity to really have a controlled environment like this where I can work with the worms and feed them on a regular basis and things like that, I think that really helps to dispel some of the fear. Oh wow, looky there. I saw some movement, but I wasn't sure what it was. And there is a worm in there. Right there, right at my finger. You can see it moving around, so I'll go ahead and grab that worm as well. And we will relocate it into the relocation center. It's neat to see just how prolific the worms have been. But I think this is well sifted now. I'm gonna go ahead and gather up these castings and add them right in here. So these are the fruits of our labor. Now these castings are also have a good bit of eggshell mixed in, which, with this being the citrus bin, the citrus crawlers bin, I think is appropriate. It really helps with just kind of a slow release of calcium, which helps to offset some of the acidity of the contents that we're adding to this bin, you know. So that really helps with the worms having an ideal environment in my mind. Okay, here we go. We found another worm here. I just saw a little bit of movement there, and you can see it right there, right where my finger is. So we're gonna relocate that person too, or that worm. But it's good to see how many small worms there are all throughout the castings. So just gonna go ahead and we're gonna need to do this quite a few times, but I'm really excited to be able to gift these castings and kind of develop a bit of a community around people trying to minimize waste, minimize organic waste going to the landfill. So with that being done, I'm going to go ahead and get another nice little scoop of, I'm trying to dig mostly from the top, as I anticipate the bottom would have a higher concentration of worms just by default. So, And I'm gonna go ahead and get another cup full as well. So we got 2 cups this time that we're doing. Oh yeah, you can see some nice worms in there too. And being able to do this outdoors during the day is really nice because it helps with separating things. Trying to catch that rogue worm there. I'll just put it in the relocation bin. And got another worm there on top. Wrangle that one. Put it in the reload bin as well. And I'm not afraid to toss in a little bit of castings into the relocation bin, as that really helps with just the microbiome, kind of establishing a bit of a microbiome there for the worms, which is nice because they're not going to a largely sterile environment. So I'm gonna toss that worm in there. Got a lot of worms going into this small environment, and I'm hoping they will thrive well in there. We've got a lot of worms we're finding in here. A lot of little teeny tiny worms. Wow, look at that. Another little baby there. Toss that one into the relocation center. And I will acknowledge it's hard to envision being able to catch all of these worms with the sizes that we are finding, but we are going to do our utmost to try to redirect most of them back to a worm bin. I've got a worm on here, so I'm going to go ahead and put this entire piece of shell in there. And I've got another worm that's peeking its head up here. Put that in the relocation bin as well. I'm hoping they'll work their way, you know, into the bin and or into this glass jar we have here. Find themselves at home. And just to give you an idea of how difficult this is, look at this worm here. I believe that is a worm, but that is so hard to just pick up or grasp and move. But I've got it on my fingertip now. Trying to zoom in on it for you. And I'm gonna try to move that one as well into the bin. Hopefully it didn't get hurt by me grabbing it there, but yeah, that's what we've got here. I tried to pick a shady spot for this, realizing that it might be a more involved process. And we've got another worm here. And another worm right there. I'm not sure what this is. Looks like some eggshell as well. I may just toss this in to the relocation bin because it's not, I don't need to be tossing in large pieces of eggshell into the castings. Here's another worm there. So I'm really excited after harvesting this bin to feed them again and see their population really explode. I think it'll provide a lot of... All right, back to the castings. The search of the castings for worms. Got another one here. Sorry, trying to zoom in so you can see that. There we go. Alrighty. Here's another worm. another one. Oh, there goes one trying to hide. Oh, we lost that one. I don't want that guy to dry out. Oh no. Got it. And in it goes. All right, so we are getting the worms. And time to also gather up the castings. So here we go. Castings look good to go. Those look good to go as well. Found a worm in these. Sorry, trying to zoom in on it for you. There we go. I'll try to dump the worm and keep the castings. All right, well, it doesn't want to let go, so we'll just put the worm in there too, with the castings. Here's some eggshell. There was a worm in here. There it is. So I will say that the worms are very well distributed throughout this bin and throughout these castings. Which is a very healthy sign. Oh boy, we got a roly-poly here. I'm gonna go ahead and, I think it's a roly-poly. It does not appear, oh, no, actually it is, yep. Let's scoop that guy up and put it into with the worms. There we go. Definitely want that person to, or that critter to be in there in the new bin. They really do a good job of helping to decompose some of the tougher organic matter. Some of these little clumps also contain a lot of worms. So here's one that has a worm on it. Here's another one. Got a worm there. All right. So we're gonna look at this handful of castings, see how we're doing as far as worms go. We've got a fly flitting around. All right. And we've got another worm in here. Oops. Put that one in there. Most of the worms that we're finding are not of reproductive age. They're very tiny. Oh, look at that. I've got a worm right on the corner of my hand. And try to dump that one in. Oh, got another one in there. See if we can get that one into our collection spot. Oops. Okay, so we put it right on the edge. Hopefully it'll work its way into the bin. It's just a handful of castings, and we found I've already found so many worms. It's just so hard to extricate them because they are so small. Right back to the main mound of castings. Let's take another handful. And I've got another worm. Sorry about the zoom. So here's another worm right there. Okay, I dropped that one. I'm now just trying to work through the castings a little bit. Those look good. This is definitely more labor intensive than you might originally think, because of the size of the worms. Definitely more labor intensive than I gave it credit for. So it is neat to be able to harvest, though, and to be able to see the fruit of our labor. So here we go. Got another little worm in that little bunch. Gonna toss that in there and then put the rest in here. This looks like straight castings. Got a worm on my finger there. So I'm gonna finish this up. Finish up this little round here. And then we may call it for this video while I continue to go through the castings. Got lots of little worms. So I'm really hoping that that bodes well for the new bin when I do divide it up. That worm didn't want to go in there. All right, so I feel like I've got, on the edge, I've got some castings here. Looks good to me. We'll put those in. This is not obviously the only way that you can harvest your castings. There are some ways that are a little bit more automated, but I do enjoy, this is my, I would say my second time really doing a harvest, and this is probably the most relaxed harvest I've been able to do. Don't have anything pressing, which is a rarity, but really allows me to take my time and go through here a little more thoroughly, which I do enjoy. So all right. Well, we're making a lot more deposits and finding fewer worms, so looks like all that preliminary work is really adding up. Here's another handful. And this one seems to be without worms too, so go ahead and put that in as well. Oh boy. Back is kind of getting stiff. All right, got a worm here on this. Put that into our collection bin. Got another worm here on my hand. Let that one through to the collection bin. Got another worm here, right in that nugget of castings. So we'll just dump that nugget of castings in there. Got another worm. Sorry about that. Got another worm in that little nugget of castings. So sometimes the worms like to stay with the gold, the black gold. All right. And I'm just gonna go through here and kind of spread it a little bit more. All right, here's another handful of castings. You can see my fingers getting nice and dark. Castings are good and rich. And I don't see any worms right off the top, so I'm gonna go ahead and put that in there. Call that safe. And I would say that we are maybe about 1/3 to 1/4 of the way full on this. So yeah, it's a lot of work to get the castings separated. This handful looks pretty good. Sorry about the zoom. That also looks pretty good. Oh, got a worm there. That looks pretty good. Oh, got a worm right there at the tip. Got that dumped in. That looks good. Oh, got another worm here. So we are making some really good progress. This is not fast going, but it's really rewarding to see, to get a feeling for how moist the bin is, how dense the worm population is, the average size of the worms we have in there. So all of those things we really get a good gauge for as we harvest the bin. And remember, this has just been 3 cups, 3 of these little cups. And we've found so much life in those 3 cups. So one thing to keep in mind is that the worms are really some of the larger organisms in the worm bin. So you can only imagine how alive the bin is if the worms are thriving like this, how alive the microbial community is in the bin. And that is really what makes the castings truly alive. And the worms just reflect that. And I would say that not only do they reflect it, but they also help with the proliferation of the microbes, because their guts seem to be designed to that aim. So just pretty neat overall. Oh, got a worm right there. And the rest looks worm-free, so we'll go ahead and put it in. We're getting to the end of our 2 cups. You can see that it does leave some kind of streaks as we, just with the tactile pressure, the soft tactile pressure even causes some of this to kind of stick to the cardboard, which is not a problem. But it just shows you how moist the castings are. All right, we are really close to being done, and my back is going to thank us as we take a break. It's just nice to have some different positions to be able to stretch into and not be stuck in one position for too long. So after I finish up this, we'll go ahead and take a stretch break, and then we'll proceed again. Oh well, caught a worm there. And try to hold it back while I put the rest of it into the... There we go. Look at that. not something I would have been doing not that long, 5 years ago, having a worm just go through my hand, but I'm becoming a little bit more comfortable with it. It's part of being a worm farmer. So go ahead and put that guy in there. All right. So we've cleared the 2 cups. I'd say we have about 40% of this done. So that's not too bad. But we are going to take a break for right now. We've got the worms in here. And as you can tell, most of them have, oops, sorry about that. As you can tell, most of them have moved away from the surface. So they seem to be acclimating decently. So we'll go ahead and set them down here. We can leave it open for them to get the proper aeration. And we're gonna take a stretch break. Hi, welcome back to Worm Watts, where we harness the God-given power of compost worms to transform organic waste into amazing living fertilizer. Today we are in our harvesting era. We are actually harvesting the yield of our vermicompost bins, and we're continuing in the citrus crawlers bin. We've already gotten about 3 of these cups, and we're just going to continue with probably about 3 more before we call it a day. So, oh boy, look at that worm there. All right. So that's that. We're using this cup and just scooping the castings. We're gonna go ahead and shut this. One wonderful thing about the castings, I've brought along people before who did not care for worms or anything of that nature, but even they acknowledged that there's a really nice earthy smell to it, or no smell at all, which is really neat, especially when you consider the kind of things that go into this bin. It's really incredible to realize the transformation that's going on. So we've got a lot of eggshell here. I'm going to go ahead and put that in to the bin to go back. It's a little bit harder to manage around the eggshell, so I'm just going to go ahead and put the eggshells straight back in. If they have worms inside, they'll carry them over to the next bin. Because this relocation cup, where we're putting the worms and other items like that, will be going, I would imagine, to start a new bin here soon. So really excited about that. So stay tuned to learn more about what bin that will be. And otherwise, I'm just going through and trying to flatten this out so that I can more easily spot the worms. Here's one right there. Got it in my hand, and it's being relocated. All right, this entire area looks fairly worm-free, so I'm gonna give it a second look in my palm. See, there's a teeny tiny worm right in the middle of my palm there. Not sure if you can make it out. That is what makes this a little bit challenging. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that back down, and we'll keep flattening this out. See if we can spot any more. Got a worm in there. Yep. All right. Our relocation hotel is getting kind of full if you look at it, actually. Getting closer to the top. And in there, of course, there are some castings. We got a worm in here on this eggshell. Gonna go ahead and put that in there too. I'm really grateful that today is such a nice day outside. I have not really felt mosquitoes being a problem here. And the nice thing about castings as well is that because they're not super smelly, they don't really draw in a lot of interest from pest flies like house flies and things of that nature. So that's one nice thing when you have a load of finished castings is, you know, you're not worrying about flies going for it and bugging you over it. It's one of the beautiful things about putting your food waste into a worm bin is that it takes that which is normally rather smelly and problematic and draws in flies and turns it into an asset, an agricultural asset. So I think that's one of the neat things about the transformation process that happens in the worm bin. So these castings, at least from this vantage point, look fairly worm-free. I'm gonna get another handful. I feel confident putting that in. So I'm gonna open this up. And in it goes. All right, same thing. We're looking it over. I found a worm right there by my thumb. It is kind of flitting around, which is normal. So I'm gonna try to drop that piece over there. Other than that though, not really seeing anything else pop out. So we'll go ahead and put those castings in there, and then we'll go back for the worm and put it in the relocation bin. There we go. And I'm getting a little bit faster. Nothing popping out there, so go ahead and put that in. I think we've hit about the 50% mark on the container there. There's a nice breeze coming through, which is really refreshing. And we've got a few worms in there now. Starting to see them. That one is not a worm, but this one is. Oops. All right, there it is. Go ahead and put that piece in the relocation bin. So if anybody asks you what your hobbies are, if you're like me, you get to tell them that you like playing with poop during your free time. That's sure to get an eyebrow raise. Got another worm in here. Not seeing worms in this one. Alrighty. And these castings can go a long way, so I know I had pulled up all of these containers here to fill, but it makes me so glad that castings go such a long way, because I don't think that I'm going to fill all of these today. So this is not going to be a complete harvesting of this bin. That would take probably several hours. All right, so that's 4 cups of our castings done. And as you can tell, the majority of it has gone into the castings bucket. There's been a little bit that's gone in here, but it is quite a bit of work sorting. All right, so let's get some more. It might actually be a good idea to leave this open and let the sun kind of shine down on it to force the worms further down. So probably going to do that. Leave it open with the goal of forcing the worms to bed down further to keep the castings toward the top. So that's what I'll be doing. All right, so I just poured this and I noticed that I got this chunk of wood here. That's going straight back into the worm bin. Definitely want to see that break down. And now we're just gonna spread this out again. I'd like to get it away from this corner here because that's kind of difficult to navigate, and I don't want to keep losing castings to the edge. So I'm just going to pull those castings away from the corner. And we'll spread them again and see what we find. They're nice and cool to the touch, slightly moist. Alrighty. Not seeing any worms in here. And I look for a couple things. Obviously I look for the worms, but I also just look for movement. When disturbed, the worms do kind of move around a little bit more. And not seeing anything in that one, so go ahead and put that in here. We're getting closer to the top of this. The more I kind of stir it, shake it around, the more it kind of packs in, but all right, let's see. All right, it's going in. Not really seeing any worms in this one, so this was a nice little scoop. Alrighty, so I think that's going to do it on this container. I think this is more than enough for our drop off today. I'm going to fill another one probably about halfway, kind of like this, and then we'll be done. So thanks so much for watching us work on the harvest. It's a lot of work, but it's definitely a neat to be able to see the fruit of the labors of the worms, and obviously of the work that we put in to kind of keep the bin at optimal health. So I hope that gave you a little bit of an idea of what it's like to do this by hand. And if you have any suggestions or comments, things that you think would help, please feel free to toss them down in the comments. I obviously did all of this by hand with very few tools outside of this cup. So yeah, I'd love to hear if you've done harvesting, what you've used. I know a lot of people will use things like a sifter and a kind of a screen, which is obviously a lot faster. Just kind of pour it on the screen and shake back and forth. So yeah, I'd love to hear what you use. But I think this is a really neat way of just demonstrating that you don't need necessarily any special equipment to get a job like this done. You just need time and willingness. So yeah, thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time on Worm Watts.